Okay, welcome to the Montgomery County Civic Federation's November meeting. My name is Cheryl Gannon, and I'm the president. The first order of business is to approve the agenda. It was published on page 2 of the newsletter online this month. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. The agenda is adopted. The next order of business is to adopt the minutes of the October 14th meeting, which were published on page 7 of the newsletter. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion is adopted. And next is the treasurer's report. Jerry Garson is our treasurer. Go ahead, Jerry.
We operate on a fiscal year from July 1 and through November 14th. We've collected $1,433 worth of dues. We've had expenses of $628, which is made up of mostly our website and a membership. And our current cash balance is $7,021. If there's any questions, contact me.
Going out the announcements segment, Alan Bowser has 2 brief announcements.
Good evening, everybody. 2 announcements from me. On November 16th, the Civic Federation will be participating in the Silver Spring, the Montgomery County Thanksgiving Parade. It's from 10 to 10 to noon. We'll have a car in the parade. Jerry Garson will drive the car. If anybody else would like to participate and ride in the car, you're welcome to meet our group at the staging location, which is Ellsworth Drive in Veterans Place behind the Silver Spring Civic Building at around 10 o'clock. Contact me, alan.bowser@gmail.com for more information. It's a great event, and we hope to see you there. Secondly, I want to talk about the Committee for Montgomery Annual Legislative Breakfast. MCCF is a founding member of the Committee for Montgomery. We'll have a table at the upcoming 36th Annual Legislative Breakfast on November 22nd. That's next Friday at 7 a.m. at the Bethesda North Marriott Conference Center. If you'd like a seat at the table, please let us know right away. The tickets to attend and sit at our table are going to be $100. The regular tickets are $200. So it's a discount. This year, speakers include Governor Wes Moore, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Congressman Jamie Raskin, and a panel of state delegates, Lily Chi, Jeanette Wilkins, and District 20 Senator Will Smith Jr. It's the best networking opportunity of the year. Jeff Griffith is one of our delegates, has indicated that he'd like to attend. We've got 2 more seats. 2 vacant seats at our table. If you'd like to attend, $400, please let us know. Thank you very much. Back to you, Cheryl.
Okay, now we will move on to so I'm sorry, Jerry has an announcement too. Jerry?
On Monday, December 16th, 2024 at 7 p.m., a Zoom meeting will be held by the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc. MCCF will host a session with the Supervisor of Assessments for Montgomery County, Ava McIntyre-Garvey, and Brian Levinson of our staff, explaining the assessment process and how to appeal your assessment if you think it's too high. And in our newsletter and probably online, we'll explain how you can look at your current assessment. If you were assessed as of January 2022, you'll be reassessed as of January 2025. And if you want to appeal your current assessment, you can also appeal, but you'd have to appeal before December 31st. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to our speaker program. Our focus tonight is a preview of the upcoming legislative session of the Maryland General Assembly, which is set to convene early next year. We're very fortunate to have 3 speakers tonight that I'm going to just briefly introduce. Senator Jeff Waldstreicher was first elected to the Senate representing District 18 in 2018 after serving in the House of Delegates from 2007 to 2019. He's currently the Vice Chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Delegate Julie Palakovich-Carr was elected to the House of Delegates in 2019, currently serves as Deputy Majority Whip She also serves on the Ways and Means Committee and is chair of the Early Childhood Subcommittee. Delegate Marc Korman was elected in 2014 to represent District 16 in the House of Delegates. He's the chair of the Environment and Transportation Committee. So to the speakers, I know that positions and assignments change. I got these off your websites. Please correct the record if any of this is wrong or you've changed some of your positions or assignments. I'm sure everyone would be interested to know that. We look forward to this preview of the upcoming session. I want to thank all of you very much for giving us this time tonight. It means a lot to us to hear from you. So you can go ahead. Did you guys decide who was going to talk first?
No, I thought you were going to go first to avoid a constitutional crisis.
Well, usually I defer to the chair, but I'm happy to go first just to move us along. And well, let's talk about the most obvious thing first. Well, let me say thank you first. That should always come first to President Gannon, Alan Bowser, and so many friends and constituents that I see on this call tonight. Thank you so much for everything you do for our community. The Civic Fed makes our community stronger, and its recent energy coming out of the last couple of years is really palpable. The Civic Federation was once a big force in Montgomery County, and it's clear that it is a big force once more. So thank you to all of you for your activism and what you do, not only for the Federation, but for your individual civic associations. And a special thanks to my constituents who are on this call. Much of what we're going to talk tonight about is about the upcoming legislative session and especially the budget picture. Maryland is the only state in the union where members don't sit on multiple committees. We only sit on one committee. That encourages specialization. And between Chair Palakovich-Carr, who chairs our delegation and sits on the Ways and Means Committee, and Chair Korman, who for many years sat on the Appropriations Committee, I'm going to allow them to discuss those issues. So I don't want you to think that I'm avoiding it. I'm just saving it for my colleagues. I want to talk about two other things tonight. The first is what might happen as a result of the election last week, last Tuesday. And the second is about some of the public safety issues that I know many of you are concerned about in your own community. So first of all, let's talk about briefly the impact of the election from Tuesday. Now, I understand that the Civic Federation is not a partisan organization. And in fact, what's wonderful about the Civic Fed is that it's more heterodox than many of the groups that Chair Korman and Chair Palakovich-Carr and I speak with. That's a good thing. But we shouldn't be shy about talking about the impact of the election on the General Assembly. The next few months are going to be chaotic. And whether you like the policies of the incoming president or don't, I think it's clear that he governs in a way that is different than what we are used to. And that's going to cause an impact on us in the Assembly. And a lot of what we are going to be doing is reacting to what's happening at the federal level. That means reacting what's happening with regards to immigration and, of course, some of the budget impacts that you'll hear about later today. And so as well planned as we can be, as well prepared as we can be, I think we have to be forthright in saying this is going to be a chaotic session, and the 4 years when the president-elect was previously president were similarly chaotic. And so there's just a certain unpredictability that we're about to go through. You know, we'll just work our way through it. Let me touch a little bit on public safety because I hear from a lot of our association presidents about this issue. And many of your individual associations have frequently heard from our police commanders and community relations officers about what's happening in our community. As you know, we had a huge increase in many types of crimes in the post-COVID era as we kind of exited COVID. Those numbers are fortunately down, but most crimes, and certainly some serious ones like carjacking, thefts from vehicles, theft of vehicles remain stubbornly high and higher than they were before COVID. The General Assembly, working in partnership with our county government, and I see Pete Fosselman, who works for the county here and has been great on this issue, have taken a really thoughtful and aggressive approach when it comes to securing our public safety. And a lot of what we hear about is juvenile crime. And last year, the General Assembly passed a momentous Juvenile Crime Reform Act. And I just wanted to touch briefly on what that does. What we really hear a lot about when it comes to juvenile crime is accountability. But it's important to note that accountability is really accountability for everyone. We do need to hold children who are committing dangerous crimes in our community accountable for their actions. But just as importantly, the adults who work in the system, the adults who help rehabilitate the children, the adults who serve when it comes to drug and alcohol treatment, they all need to be held accountable too. And so our Comprehensive Juvenile Justice Reform Act really is about holding everyone in the system accountable and making sure children who have gone astray have the services and treatment that they need to return to our community in a way that's respectful and safe. And I think even though the law just went into effect, I think you're starting to see some of the results of that. Crime is coming down. MCPS is taking public safety much more seriously than it has in the past. I'm a graduate of MCPS and have 3 kids in the system. And that's important to me. And you see, as many of you know, Chief Jones is now Chief of Public Safety for the school system and is doing a great job with our new superintendent. And so I think that progress will continue. And I think you're going to see real results in increasing public safety in our community. And most importantly, getting these kids the help they need to return to society in a way that allows them to get an education, stay away from drugs and alcohol, and be productive members of our society. When it comes to these issues, I want everyone to know that we are listening and that you are welcome to keep in touch. So if you are an association in my legislative district, don't hesitate to let me know what's happening on the ground when it comes to public safety in District 18. Now, of course, same is true for Chairman Korman and Chair Palakovich-Carr, I'm sure. With that, I want to turn it over to Chairman Korman, who I think will talk a lot about our budget picture, which is complex. Thank you so much again for having me.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator. I'm actually going to pass it off to Delegate Palakovich-Carr to go first.
Thank you to both my colleagues. Good to be here with everyone this evening. Thank you so much for the invite. I'll echo the Senator's compliments in that regard. We appreciate the opportunity to just provide a little bit of an update about what issues we might be seeing in the upcoming session. So as was mentioned, I'm State Delegate Julie Palakovich-Carr, and I serve on the House Ways and Means Committee, where I chair the Early Childhood Subcommittee. And I also chair the Montgomery County House Delegation. And actually, I'm going to use my prerogative, putting that last chair hat on for a moment, just to put a plug in that for those who aren't aware, our delegation's open mic night, our priorities hearing, is coming up this coming Monday. Signups are still open through tomorrow. So if there's anything that is on your mind that you'd like to bring to the attention of the delegation, you can testify at the virtual hearing this coming Monday, or you can submit written testimony, and that gets distributed to all of our members. So if you'd like more information on that, I'll try to remember to put the link into the chat when I'm done speaking for more information about that hearing. But I do want to take a few minutes just to talk about the state's fiscal challenges and what that might mean for this upcoming session that starts in January. So just yesterday, the Spending Affordability Committee met, and we were briefed about basically where the state's revenues are at and what the forecast is looking ahead the next few years in terms of the state's revenues and what that might mean for some big and important initiatives in our state, including for transportation infrastructure and for public education. So the situation really is not great. I'm sorry, one moment, my son is coming down. Sorry, beauty of being in a Zoom meeting. The situation really is less than ideal. We are facing some pretty big challenges that in some ways are actually worse than what the legislature faced during the Great Recession in terms of the revenues that are coming in and what the spending needs are going out. A lot of this actually is being driven by just a few factors. One, the federal money that we got during the pandemic, that was like one-time money. That money is pretty much all gone at this point. And then you add to that some key classes of revenues, tax money that comes into the state are declining slightly or staying flat. And then you add some big spending obligations, especially in terms of transportation infrastructure, as well as investments in our public schools. And it adds up overall to what's going to be projected as a $2.7 billion deficit in just a couple of years. So as was mentioned, we're going to have a challenging session this year to figure out basically how to make that work. We're required to have a balanced budget. So, addressing this is going to be really a big challenge for this coming session. I will say on the education side, I think for many folks probably have heard a little bit about the blueprint for Maryland's future, the education reforms that we passed several years ago that were really just only in about the second and a half academic year of implementation. But we really are starting to see some key improvements, even right here in Montgomery County Public Schools. Say my son is actually a public school student. And I think one of the big successes, the early successes of the blueprint to date has been the expansion of publicly funded pre-K. So we're up to 4,600 students. These at this point are largely low-income students, but that's going to keep expanding over time, who are attending for no cost or very low cost to their families, high quality public pre-K programs here in our county. And statewide, we're at about, I think, 33,000 students this school year. So I think that really has been an early success in terms of that education law. But my guess is that's going to be something that's going to be on the table to talk about for this upcoming session. And then let me just really briefly mention, in terms of what I'm personally going to be working on this session, childcare. It will be a big issue for me. We know that the lack of high quality, affordable childcare continues to be a big barrier for many families. And even though the community that we live in does have a lot of providers, affordability really is the big challenge for many families. So we're going to be looking at a variety of ways to try to address that and really trying to remove some unnecessary burdens that are adding to the cost for providers to be in that marketplace. So I'm looking forward to making some progress on that this session. And with that, let me turn it over to Chair Korman.
Great. Thank you, Julie and Jeff, and thank you to the Civic Fed for having us, and always great to have a chance to connect. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to follow up with Julie's points about the budget, just talk a little bit more about transportation. As this group probably knows, we kind of budget the general fund, which is where a lot of our education, public safety, healthcare dollars come from, a little bit separately from the transportation trust fund, which has sort of dedicated revenues that go to it. But like the broader general fund, the transportation trust fund has some challenges. They're driven by similar things to what Julie described for the general fund. Obviously, COVID dollars drying up. It's nice to have, sort of free money from Uncle Sam. That's, mostly gone away. And some big expenditures we've programmed for, some big things we want to do. But the other two things that are really driving the transportation shortfall are, one, the revenue that we dedicate to transportation is eroding. The largest single component of our transportation trust fund is the motor fuel tax, the gas tax. It's eroding for two reasons. A small reason is more and more people getting zero emission vehicles, but the bigger reason is just actually improved gas mileage of traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. And so the amount of money we used to get is kind of eroding away over time from the transportation trust fund. And the other big driver is inflation. A lot of our transportation dollars in the state of Maryland go to operating costs at WMATA, our regional transit system here in Montgomery County in our region, and also the Maryland Transit Administration system in the Baltimore area. And as we've increased wages or had to buy new rail ties or fuel for the buses, those costs are now just a lot more than we thought they were going to be 4 or 5 years ago when we faced such a different level of inflation. So the administration every September 1st has to release a draft transportation budget. This year's budget, fully funds debt service and the operating costs, but basically froze the construction program. If that sounds familiar, it's because we faced a very similar situation last year. Though last year was a little bit worse because they were also proposing to cut some of the operating funds. There was not going to be an increase to WMATA. They were going to cut what's called highway user revenue, which is the county share of the gas tax that goes back to the counties. They were going to cut something called locally operated transit systems, which is state money that goes to in our case, the ride-on system, but the other transit systems around the state. We stepped up last year with the Senate and the governor, and did some tough things. We passed some revenue raisers. We increased registration fees. We increased a fee you pay if you use an Uber or a Lyft. We did a few other things, and that's what allowed us to be in a slightly better position this year. But we didn't solve the problem last year, and so the big issue of how are we going to fund the big projects has not really been solved. And so, what I'm just trying to tell people is whatever project you think is important, whether you think we should, rebuild and expand the American Legion Bridge tomorrow, or add another track on the Brunswick line, Marc rail system, or not really for this group, but statewide, if you're interested in building the Red Line East-West connection and light rail in Baltimore City, we don't have enough money for any of that. So whatever it is you want to do, we don't have enough money for it, and so we need to figure out what it is we want to buy, and then how it is we want to buy it. And so that's part of the broader budget challenge that Julie mentioned. I will just plug one bill that I'm working on. It's a bi-county bill, so one of those bills that'll be subject to local bill hearings, I think in the first or second week of December. It's the WSSC Transparency and Reform Act. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I find that I have more and more constituent service cases related to WSSC every year with some pretty challenging problems. A lot of just grossly incorrect bills, often unexplainable. WSSC has a process to deal with that, but it's not very efficient to send someone a bill that has no bearing on reality and expect them to go through some administrative process to get it fixed. There's also limits on that administrative process. Even if WSSC or a plumber you hire cannot explain why your bill is unreasonably high, you can only benefit from the adjustment WSSC will make 2 times every 3 years. And more broadly, WSSC is seeking a double-digit rate increase. I'm a big government liberal Democrat, so I don't mind paying for things that we want to pay for, but there is sort of a question of sustainability, and so we need to make sure that WSSC is on sort of a sustainable course. And then some of you, Pete Fossman in particular, know we have a very particular issue with WSSC, which is about 25 years ago, they took on some obligations in the Avenel community that now they're not doing, even though they were legal obligations that they took on. So I have a bill that addresses a number of those issues, and we can talk for people interested in the Q&A about how we get at it. But some of the big changes are to make one of our WSSC commissioners the county's director of environmental protection, to put a little bit of expertise and government power into the WSSC oversight process, as well as stay in the legislature's intent that WSSC shift to monthly billing, which would be much easier for constituents to kind of understand why they're paying what they're paying, and a few other changes that I'm sort of happy to talk about. But the best part of these meetings is always talking about what you all want to talk about. So with that, let me throw it back to Cheryl.
Thank you for that. That was a lot of information. I appreciate it. So we will have some time for questions or comments or concerns tonight. I'm going to start first with Ken Markison. Ken is the co-chair of our Housing and Land Use Committee, and he has an issue that he'd like to bring up.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you to all of the delegates, including Chair Korman, who is my delegate. I do want to say today that we are particularly concerned about several pieces of legislation, but I wanted to focus on MC 225, introduced by Delegate Moon. If enacted, the bill would void and make unenforceable any restrictions in homeowner association or HOA agreements and that deal with or operate against accessory dwelling units or ADUs. It's MCCF's position that the bill is unwarranted and probably unnecessary as well. Homeowner associations are established and regulated in Montgomery County as common ownership communities under agreements and covenants entered into between communities or their developers with homeowners, generally at the time of sale. Under these arrangements, homeowners agree to the HOA's restrictions on their properties, and in return, the HOA agrees to several undertakings on their behalf regarding the property and the community that they chose. I think it's important to recognize that many purchasers of properties in HOAs essentially find the HOA that's arrangements, whether they be stricter about particular changes or not, but the individual consumer shops, if you will, to some extent, for the right community with the right mix of covenants. Just to become a bit more specific, these arrangements assign HOAs to care for common areas, handle landscaping, and also assure the overall appearance and quality of the community. HOAs charge the homeowner fees based on the services provided. And all common ownership communities in MoCo are required under rules of the county to have a board of directors and collect fees for the county's administration of HOAs. In 2019, Montgomery County passed legislation to permit ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. Since then, there has been little activity on the part of the county and on the part of homeowners or home buyers in the county to take advantage of ADUs. And that pertains even in areas where there's been significant housing demand and little inventory. I should say that MCF takes the view that we need to address all the housing needs that we can, but we need to do it based on available data. I think as we look at that data, we're not finding a demand for this particular product to be in the county, let alone in homeownership associations. Over the last decade, notwithstanding, the number of HOAs has grown with the encouragement of the county. And as I indicated, individuals shop based to some extent on what the requirements are in that particular HOA. It seems that considering the lack of strong demand, or at least evidence based on data of demand, or lack thereof, that this really does become unwarranted. And more importantly, it topples the arrangement that was agreed to by the community and the individual, and instead substitutes a different model, which may affect the consumer's belief of his or her needs or wants, and frustrates the original choice. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk in greater detail.
Well, Ken, thank you for those comments. And I'll just reiterate that the delegation does have hearings coming up. So in addition to the priorities hearing, all the local bills, including the one you just mentioned, will be heard by the delegation. Our December hearing dates are 2 adjacent Mondays, the 9th and the 16th. The bills have not yet been assigned for which date they're going to be heard, but that'll be up on our website soon, probably beginning of next week. So I would just encourage folks to keep an eye on the delegation website, or to even better, sign up for our email updates, and you'll be alerted when those hearing dates have been set and how you can sign up to testify. So we do welcome people to come in and to share their opinions on all the bills we're considering.
And I can share a little data meat on your bones, Ken. So in 2022, there are 126 ADU permits in Montgomery County. In 2021, there are 122. And in 2020, there are 110. I don't have 2023 or 2024 data. I have to say that the ADU program basically started when COVID started. So I'm not surprised that it sort of had a slow start. I have to tell you, I'm just going to be completely honest. I can't tell. It's not clear to me that lack of interest is really the problem. Because if we're saying in great swaths of the county, you can't build ADUs, even though in non-HOA areas, it's now by right in Montgomery County, that kind of explains why there's not a high demand to be building ADUs because you can't build them. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there in the discussion, but I think we will see probably statewide legislation on this issue as well. There was an ADU task force that met the last couple of years. And I'll also warn you, Ken, I know you know this, but the HOA laws, they're written in state law. I'm quite familiar now in my relatively new role as chair of the committee that has jurisdiction over housing. There are many, many, many examples of where state law overrides what HOAs can do. We've had bills related to whether garden gnomes are permissible in neighborhoods, whether basketball hoops are permissible in neighborhood, selfishly political campaign signs. There are many examples of where state law steps in over top HOAs. So while this may not be the same scale as a basketball hoop, it's certainly not unprecedented for state law to sort of be in the mix on some of these questions with HOAs. But I would just, second Julie, we're going to have the local bill hearing, and then I don't know for certain, but I suspect there'll be a statewide version of this coming out of the ADU task force that you might be interested in keeping an eye on as well.
We will, and I appreciate that. I think you raise fair points. The question, though, is, are these communities specifically going to adopt ADUs? We don't know yet. But if they were to adopt them, there would be costs for these communities as well. So I think you're right. There are differences in scale between a basketball hoop and in addition to the property. And I think we need to be cognizant of the cost to homeowners who've selected these properties and will, if additional changes are made in their communities, have to bear the brunt of these increased costs, as well as the costs of increased insurance and other fees that these individuals pay each month, along with their HOA fees. But I think these are points I didn't dig too deeply into, but I think they're important when we're weighing scale.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Ken. I think Jerry Garson has his hand up. Go ahead, Jerry.
We have a problem with the real property assessment process that does not comply with the Article 14 and 15 of the Maryland Constitution, which requires uniform standards prescribed by the legislature, which we do not have. Currently, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation prescribes that houses will last 190 years with depreciation of 1% per year for the first 10 years, then a half of 1% per year for the next 180 years, including the HVAC units, or the heating, ventilation, air conditioning units, which will last 190 years. It also overvalues buildings and undervalues land. Can anything be done about this?
Well, I realize as the person who sits on Ways and Means, I probably should be the one who tries to answer this. I'll say just in general, I have not heard these specific concerns. And so Jerry, maybe you and I can follow up after this call. SSTAT is a state agency, try to say this respectfully, that has had some issues. And we have heard other issues being raised basically about assessments. I have not heard this particular one, but for other types of assessments where there's concerns about fairness, and just are they using a uniform standard across the state. So Jerry, I'll put my email address in the chat. Please follow up with me. I'd be happy to chat with you more about this offline.
Anyone else have questions? Oh, Liz Joyce, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Liz. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I wanted to add to what Jerry said. Delegate Korman was kind enough to introduce a bill a few years ago at the request of my husband and me, who ran into really interesting difficulties with SSTAT. And at the time, they were successful in eliminating this initiative. But we found out that, as Jerry points out, actually the small lots in the county are subsidizing the big properties because of the discrepancy that Jerry mentions between the value of the homes versus the property, and also the way the assessments are done. And there was no interest whatsoever in dealing with these issues when Delegate Korman brought up his very helpful bill. And I just hope that issue does not die in this is not something that's going to cost a lot of money to fix. And actually it might raise a lot of money if it's fixed. But I just want to add to what Jerry said.
Julie, the takeaway is dig up my old bill and pass it, please.
Do you have any other questions?
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Finding that raise hand function was a challenge just now. I'd like to ask Delegate Korman if you could say a little bit more about the problems with WSSC. There's a lot of concerns in our neighborhoods, East Silver Spring, about these large bills. I had a question about my bill that I received just a couple of days ago. I note that WSSC charges a quarterly account maintenance fee of, at least on my bill, it's almost $35. And I never understood why the account maintenance fee was so large. It's not the same for other utilities. And I wonder if you have any comment on that, and what we can expect with the infrastructure investment fee. So my water bill was quite low, but the fees were a pretty substantial part of the bill that I received from WSSC.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm the expert here. I've been working with a couple of folks who actually you all probably know, Richard Boltuck and Artie. I'm losing his last name, but you all know him. He's a recognizable guy to the Civic Federation. But yeah, WSSC's model has been to shift more and more to service fees as opposed to some of the maybe charges on the actual water usage that might make more sense and be more transparent. One of the things about WSSC billing is it's irregular. So a lot of times, actually, there is an explanation for why the bill looks so weird, which is it covers a totally different period of time than your prior bill before that. So unlike PEPCO, where you get a bill a month, WSSC, and this is partly because they rely on manual water readers, which a lot of other large-scale utilities don't rely on that anymore. You get bills that are kind of all over the map because the time scale they're covering is different, and so that's why I think we should be shifting towards monthly billing. I think that's much more transparent and easier for people to understand. And the technology with monthly billing would probably also eliminate a lot of these unexpected high charge situations when they do occur. So like I said, a lot of the times the explanation is actually simple. It's because your last bill was 3 months and the current bill is 6 months. And so that's the reason the bill looks so big. But other times, as I said, WSSC and a plumber you hire cannot explain the high bill. And WSSC has a policy to just lower your bill, right? They will just do a low bill adjustment, basically. Getting to technology that's better meter technology will probably eliminate the need for that, and we wouldn't have to do that anymore. So there's a lot they can do to kind of improve. Obviously, that wouldn't be free to do that transition, and part of the reason the last WSSC general manager was fired or asked to leave, depending on your interpretation of events, was because of a botched meter replacement contract. So it needs to be done deliberately. But many large water utilities have made this transition. So I refuse to believe that WSSC can't do something that they've done in Fairfax, Virginia, right? So to be continuing. And again, I would just encourage, as with the other local bill discussed, that people who are interested in participate in that bill process this December.
And then I would just add, this is on a different subject. One of the major areas of concern for the Civic Fed has been the Office of the People's Counsel, which is legislation that's been before the county council and before the state delegation. I wonder if Chair Palakovich-Carr and maybe Senator Waldstreicher, and you could give your perspectives on why that issue hasn't gone forward in the General Assembly. We thought that we had a good solution by charging MNC PPC with a People's Council mandate like they do for Prince George's County, and it seemed to get all tied up in bollocksed in the state delegation on the House side for that issue. And I'm wondering, since we have the three of you here, if you can comment on that. Maybe Julie first, but Mark, if you want to say anything.
Sure. So Alan, is, as you remember, but I'll say for everyone else on the call tonight, the legislation that the state delegation considered last session did pass the House delegation in an amended form, but then the Senate delegation did not take further action on it. To my knowledge, no bill has been reintroduced for this session.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. I think, it just gets very messy when we start trying to kind of line item budget the county council. And, I think I try to ask them, the county council members, to stay in their lane, and we try to stay in our lane. I appreciate the novelty of, the way you were trying to replicate the Prince George's County law, or the way Senator Kramer was, but I know many of, my colleagues were not comfortable with the approach. And, I know Julie worked very hard on a sort of compromise measure that the Senate didn't even, sort of further amend and send back. So it's, we didn't really have much negotiation once we made the compromise. I think the sponsor of the bill was no longer interested in moving forward. So, although I can't speak for Ben.
Well, I think what happened, I'm going to interject something here, was that it got to the Senate very late and actually would have stripped out of the county's existing statute some important provisions like the advocacy role of a people's council. And it would have been really kind of a terrible bill because it actually worsened the situation. And I think that's one thing that perplexes us. We went to the state saying we are part of a state agency. MNC PPC is a state agency, which provides a people's council to one part of it, Prince George's, and funds it. And we just want parity. Because we're also in this state agency, and somehow ended up with a compromise bill that actually worsened our situation by deleting or overriding important provisions in the county bill. And I think that's one thing that was very difficult for us to accept. And we're in a catch-22 because what we hear at the state is, oh, you have to deal with the council. That's a county thing. We're not going to get involved in it. Well, when Prince George's County put a people's council in their county charter, there was a court case, and that was basically overruled, saying that because they're in a state system, they can't have a land use thing in their county charter. So we're sort of stuck between those two. I wonder how we square that off. If somebody could just say, here's what it is, like somehow it's a county thing or it's a state thing. Because if it's a county thing, then we could move forward and do a ballot initiative to get it in the charter.
Well, I don't know how it would go in the charter, but in Montgomery County, it's pretty clearly a county thing because we had it at the county level, funded by the county until they decided to no longer fund it. So we have a history of it in Montgomery County as well. It's not like Prince George's has had something that Montgomery County has never had. Montgomery County had it. The county made a decision to, no longer fund it for whatever reason. I think it was actually before my kind of time here or time being involved. So it's pretty clear to me that it's a county thing, but I suppose my county colleagues might disagree with me. They're not here to sort of give
Well, I think they would say that. I'm just saying there was a court case because the Prince George's County was under a state land use agency that they were told they couldn't. There was a court case that said you can't put a people's council in your county charter because it conflicts with state law somehow. I haven't actually read the decision. I'm going to try to find it, but that to me seems like the catch-22 that we're in right now. But anyway. We have some more hands up. Joyce Squads. Joyce, you're muted.
There we go. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Having crossed the American Legion Bridge several times over the past week for various reasons, and you mentioned transportation, where are we on doing any work on that, if anywhere? And I realize it's controversial. There are many views about it. It's costly and so on. What somewhat worries me is I read somewhere, maybe about a year ago, that it's possible that in 5 years it will be in such bad shape that trucks and buses will have to be banned from it, which would certainly make a mess around this area. So I'm just curious where that might be.
Sure, I can take a first pass at that one. First of all, I don't think it's within 5 years. I think it's more like a 10-year horizon where some maintenance would have to be done. And yeah, that's what you do with bridges a lot of the time. You need to maintain them. So it might need work on its substructure, structure, or decking in order to maintain the level of traffic that it has today or it's projected to have in the future. As I tried to lay out, whatever project you want, whether it's the American Legion Bridge or a maglev system to Baltimore, or a new rocket center for our new co-president Elon Musk. There's not enough money for any of it, and so the American Legion Bridge has its environmental approvals, the kind of refined scope of the project from the end of the Hogan year. So it has its environmental approvals. The State Department of Transportation, under both the Hogan and Moore administration, has sought federal grants and not received them, and so that environmental approval is still there. And I think, my understanding is the Moore administration kind of still wants to move forward, but is also considering what maintenance approaches they'll have to take if, as I think we're going to be facing here, this region's not going to get a large-scale federal grant anytime soon to help with something like that. And just to be clear, the federal grant would not replace all state funding. We would still need to kick in, quite a lot. And so that's really just trying to stick with the legalities and budget of the project. I bet there's 30 different views on this call about whether it's a good idea, what lanes should be extended where, what should be widened, should there be tolls. So obviously there's all those issues out there as well.
Yeah, that I'm well aware of, but I just see it being a transportation mess and bottleneck for the foreseeable future. So wondered what was, and I know I can find ways around it and go down and cross Chain Bridge, but we're not going to, that if more traffic does that, it's going to make a mess of poor Chain Bridge. But it's a larger question than my crossing it. It's just that, as I said, I try to avoid it, and in one thing I wasn't able to. So,
Tricia Tyson, go ahead.
Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry to be late. I'm running from one meeting to the next.
That's okay.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you, Senator Waldstreicher. In a little while. I wanted to ask, is the post office in downtown Silver Spring on Thayer Avenue, is that going to be the final resting place for our post office there in Silver Spring? Or is it going to ever move to a place where there's some parking lot or something so that you can go into the post office? If I go to the post office, I try to go into Safeway so I can park on their lot. So, and I have to, buy something because I don't want to be towed. But is the post office always going to remain in that very difficult spot?
I can make an attempt at this. Pat, I represent your neighborhood, but I don't represent downtown Silver Spring. And so I don't really know the answer to that question, but I have heard that concern before, and I know this is an imperfect answer to your question. But what I've heard folks doing is coming my way to Kensington, which probably isn't as far from you as you might think, because I do the drive to your neighborhood to pick my kids up from Hebrew school. So I know it's actually not as bad as it feels. And the Kensington post office has a relatively large parking lot. Even when the parking lot is full, there's a parking lot next door for a shopping center over there. And it's often, the Kensington post office is often empty. So not the answer you were looking for, but for those of you who are struggling with parking or just busyness at the downtown Silver Spring post office, I encourage you to join us over in Kensington. It is usually a quiet post office where you can get whatever you need to do done.
It's a wonderful post office. I like the folks over there. I like the parking lot, and it's a great post office. I like that post office. But still, I wanted it's about the same distance for me, just about the same distance. But I have more to do in Silver Spring from time to time than I do in Kensington. And so I just wondered if there was if that's a dead issue, or is it still alive by some means? Thank you.
Hey, is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet want to ask a question?
I have a follow-up
Okay.
about the Office of the People's Counsel. I totally respect the state legislators wanting to stay in their lane, but from my reading of the legislation, we have a very unusual situation here. And the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which is operating under a charter that's 100 years old, is extraordinary in terms of the way it's run. For example, several years ago, we submitted a complaint about the ethics issues in the county council regarding the planning board to the attorney general. And he wrote back that he has no authority whatsoever over the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, that it polices itself, and that it's the last word on determining their course of action is their internal processes, which are their internal processes. And it was very deeply disillusioning to those of us who were so concerned. Prince George's County has always had an Office of the People's Counsel. We don't. And the local legislators went to Annapolis, and from our point of view, raised a number of questionable arguments about why we should not have one. It's only $250,000 a year. It is the only representation that citizens have, whereas real estate interests have huge funds for their to pursue their goals. So for those of us who watched what happened in the state delegation, ending up with a bill that was regressive in terms as compared to what we have now, was deeply distressing. And we hope you pay attention to this, because this is a matter of simple fairness. And this county has, in Prince George's County, the legislators cannot accept donations from campaign donations from developers. In this county, they can. And that has a huge influence on the policymaking. So we ask you to just step up in terms of taking your legitimate role as state legislators over a state agency.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Peggy Dennis has her hand up. Go ahead, Peggy.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
At a recent listening session on the attainable housing strategy thing, I brought up the problem of investors from outside the community buying up homes here, and suggested that we needed to have a bill, and I think it should be a statewide bill, called Homes for People, Not Profiteers. Because when people from outside the community or Maryland buy up real estate here, a lot of that money no longer stays in Maryland. The rents or whatever go outside. The owners have no interest in the community or even managing their properties, although many of them probably do manage them. And it just seems like we're running into the same problem that they have in the Southwest, of Saudis coming in, buying up large tracts of land, digging into the aquifer and using that land to provide alfalfa for their horses in Saudi Arabia. Only in our case, this isn't just arable land, this is homes. And I think we need some protection so that people who live here can actually buy or rent their homes from other people who live here. Any comments?
Just because it's housing, I guess I'll go first. Peggy, I mean, you emailed me about this, I think, over the weekend, so appreciate it. I think we'd have to sort of think about how something like that could work. For example, if I live in Alabama and I am moving with my family for a federal job in Washington, D.C., and I buy a home in Montgomery County, and then Grover Cleveland 2.0 becomes president, and I decide not to take that federal job, and I own that home in Montgomery County, what is the rule about how that person's home is dealt with? Now, if the issue is we don't want to let private equity funds or LLCs own homes, right, which I've also heard it that way, that's another kind of different discussion. So it wouldn't necessarily be about where they're located, but kind of what the entity is that's buying it. I actually don't know enough about, I own my home as a human being. I don't own it as an LLC or a limited partnership. So I don't know if there are kind of like normal reasons a family might use a business entity like that to own their home, so that we would be blocking out people we don't want to block out. I just don't know specifically how it would work. That's fine. You never have to know specifically how everything's going to work before a bill's introduced. So I would just have to see what a bill like that looks like and how they would sort of explain some things like that. So, I'm not sure if a bill like that is coming in, but I've certainly heard the idea of trying to keep private equity funds from buying up, tranches of homes, not for alfalfa, as you said, but for, to use as a profit-making enterprise. Not sure if we'll have a bill on it, but I've certainly heard, discussion of that, beyond our email over the weekend.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, I think more broadly, we're seeing a lot of sectors of the economy, unfortunately, where private equity is, taking larger ownership stakes and entering into things. And we're seeing, those outcomes, veterinary clinics, childcare facilities. So I think this is just part of a broader trend, unfortunately.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? All right, well then at this point, I would say thank you to our guests. We appreciate that you're willing to come here and have a candid conversation with us. And it's quite helpful to us in our thinking about the upcoming session. So I am grateful to you for coming, and we enjoyed this, and thank you very much. It's for the meeting participants. There are emails from the speakers and a personal cell phone from Jeff Waldstreicher, and a link to the county delegation hearings, and a link to Marc Korman's email and his phone number. So if you want to scroll through participants and find, if you want some of this, you can copy it out of the chat right now. Okay, I am going to move on to the new business part of our agenda. I just want to announce really that the resolution we adopted on attainable housing has gone to the council this afternoon. And the resolution itself is posted on the Civic Fed's website under resolutions. And the letter to the council and the resolution is also on the Civic Fed website under the Land Use and Planning Committee. So that's where you'll find the cover letter if you need that. I encourage you to, share it in your communities. One question was raised with me today by a member that we didn't sign people's name to the resolution. And Alan was telling me we don't vote on that many things in the Civic Fed, but we've never done that before. There's really a difference in the way different associations approach the Civic Fed. Some take a vote first in their community before they vote in the Civic Fed. Some, like mine, just see it as voting to say what the Civic Fed should do, and not saying the residents of our community are committed to this. So we just have a little bit different approach to it. So we don't sign names. It is a shame to do it and then not do more with it. And so one idea I had, and I thought maybe people could react to this, is if you would take the resolution up in your individual civic association and just get a vote of endorsement of it and send a letter to the council saying, we just want you to let you know that we endorse this resolution in our community. I think that could be quite powerful when the council members start getting letters from the communities saying that we endorse this resolution. But I don't know, I'm just looking for a reaction to that, or different ideas on what we might continue to do with the resolution. It's raining out. Everybody's tired. Okay. The other announcement I have is if you could remember to just shoot an email to info@ montgomerycivic.org and just give me the number of households in your community, in your civic. What we have for dues purposes is a range. And I was trying to come up with a sort of an estimate of what our reach is in the Civic Federation in terms of the number of households we can reach through you all. But when you get to 600 plus, I have no idea if that's 1,000 or 1,200 or what it is. And I would like to have a number right now, the number of households that we reach. So it can be approximate. You don't have to type anything else out, just a number, just email the number in. So that I'm just going to put it in a spreadsheet and add it up. And then the other thing is
can I just add a comment? Can we get the number of households that are in this thing, forgetting not the number of paid households? We have dues based on paid households. We'd like to know how many paid households you have and how many total households in your neighborhood, so we have some better idea. Thanks.
Okay. And what else? I just got knocked off what I was thinking about. Yeah, so the resolution, think about whether or not you want to take an affirmation vote in your neighborhood, or whether, I think some people already did that before they voted. And then you might want to send a letter to the council just saying that in our neighborhood, we voted to endorse this resolution. Okay, is there anyone else want to bring anything up under new business?
Cheryl, I just had a question for you. Did you send the resolution to the media? Like, do you have any plans to publicize it further? Because I mean, it's really excellent, and the Federation works so hard on it. So I'm just curious, so that the planning board has dug in and is always out there defending it. I think it's really important for people in Montgomery County to know that these are the concerns with it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I don't have any problem doing a local press release and sending it out to the reporters that are covering it. We can do MoCo 360 and Maryland Matters. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Anything else? How'd y'all feel?
I've got a question, since we have the group is assembled. Should we make another push for the Office of the People's Counsel for this session of the General Assembly? Should we go to Senator Kramer and see if he's prepared to introduce identical or similar legislation as he did last year?
He told someone that he would only do it if we lined up more groups than just us. And I don't think we did any work on that, trying to get a coalition together. But I think in his opinion, it was going to take a coalition effort, and not just the Civic Fed. I don't know. Listening to those responses tonight, I feel kind of pessimistic. How did you hear it, Alan?
Well, there wasn't a lot of support for the original resolution that Senator Kramer introduced, and it got watered down. And they thought that they had done the Lord's work by coming up with some bill that they could send over to the Senate. But I think we should just keep it on the radar screen, because it is a big deal for us.
Yeah,
I was
just wondering if we should do a legislative alert that you would share with your neighborhoods to try to get the council to fund it.
It's Ken, is it the kind of thing we might think about doing a resolution on it as well? If nothing else, to get some support from our member associations about this.
We could, I think, there must be a resolution at some point on the People's Council, but we could do a new refresher one. I mean, I think with this attainable housing, it's pretty clear they fought us as hard as they did, because they wanted us to go through attainable housing without any kind of expert help.
Right.
And
Right.
so I was actually thinking about, making that one of our talking points, and maybe if we put out a legislative alert, would you share it in your neighborhoods, just explaining what a People's Council does and that, this hasn't been funded in 12 years. And write to the council in support of a People's Council. I mean, we could try the state again. It just feels like a really heavy lift. Jackie has her hand up. Go ahead, Jackie.
Have a resolution. I just went to the website and checked. If you scroll through resolutions in May 9th of 2022, a resolution supporting funding of the Office of the People's Council.
I didn't know. That's a while.
Okay, I think Dan has his hand up. Dan, go ahead.
Why not just ask for the same arrangements that they have in Prince George's County? Angela also Brooks gave me a detailed copy of what they enjoy. Marc, our county executive, said not only do they have park and planning pay for that, but there are a lot of other things that Prince George's County that park and planning pays for Prince George's County that we don't enjoy. So why aren't we given the same treatment? Seems like it's discriminatory. You could just base it on that. That should get the legislators a little bit concerned.
I agree, but I think we're going to have to do some work in bringing some other groups in favor of this. And essentially this compromise that they did in the state legislature was very similar to the Friedson bill. It was a clearinghouse without an advocacy role. And the Friedson bill got a very bad report on the Racial Equity and Social Justice Review, pointing out that the functions that had been shuttled under the Friedson bill that was going to fall the hardest on low income and communities of color were the most likely to not be able to hire land use attorneys. So I think we should certainly make some renewed effort, but I was thinking maybe, so in terms of bringing other groups in, maybe there are groups that, are dealing with diversity that may come on board with this. And I think we did have some groups in favor of it. We had the Countryside Coalition, I think. And Liz, do you remember who else was supporting it?
I really don't. I'd have to look it up. But it's really astonishing that this seems to be the racial equity issue is what I wanted to mention, because it's contentious even to bring it up in a forum like this. But our current president went to Annapolis and told them that his bill would enhance racial equity, despite the fact that all of the agencies that did a review of this said it was very discriminatory. And the discrepancy between these 2 points of views seems not to have bothered the state legislators. And as I say, that's one thing if it wasn't their lane, but it is their lane because it's a state agency, and it's a moribund, outdated, and non-functional agency, which is hurting Montgomery County.
All right, so it's late for a bill.
Brenda's got her hand up.
Okay, Brenda, go ahead. We can't hear you, Brenda.
You can hear me.
Now we can hear you.
I'd like to get a copy of that People's Council resolution, the earlier one, because in my community, which doesn't want to say anything, Woodside Park Civic Association, when we talked about the People's Council, there were several people interested in it just because of other issues. And it was not necessarily zoning, but when they would contact certain offices in Montgomery County not getting help, and they felt that they were getting the runaround, the People's Council did seem like a possible avenue of support. So maybe it's one way to get people interested in it, or, you know, to react to it.
So like I was just saying, it is late to get a bill like that in. And so we would have to, I don't know who was willing to work on this. We'd have to start pulling in groups.
Someone just mentioned that there had been a People's Council resolution at one time.
Yes. So what Senator Kramer said was it's not going to pass just by the Civic Federation. There needs to be other groups brought into it. And that's what I'm asking, is whether people have time to work on that and go to places like Casa de Maryland or other nonprofits. I feel like Progressive Maryland maybe, or Our Revolution, just try to line up some kind of support. It would be a lot of work and would have to be done, I think, pretty quickly. I mean, I guess we could ask him to introduce it and tell him we'll do that work while it's pending. All right, well, why don't I talk to the executive committee about it, and the housing chairs. Would try to figure out what's reasonable. We could ask Senator Kramer at this point what he thinks is reasonable. He'll have to be the one to judge it. He's a brave guy. He's not afraid to stick his neck out, but I don't know if he thinks it's futile this year.
I think it would be helpful to talk to the county executive. He's always been a strong champion of this particular issue, and may want it to be part of his legacy. Maybe he can give us some ideas about where he thinks the pressure points are. I think he could include, and I think he will include an appropriations recommendation for the People's Council in the next budget, and then we could advocate around that.
Right, and we can testify on it. Yeah, Stacy, go ahead.
Hi there, good evening. For anyone that is interested in meeting with County Executive Marc Elrich, there actually is a gathering taking place this Sunday at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School from 4 to 6 p.m. There will not be a Zoom link, it will not be recorded, and it will be an opportunity to be in conversation with the county executive. And it sounds like this would be a great idea to bring to his attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, is that the Rolling Woods Civic Fed that is sponsoring that, Stacy?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Sunday at BCC High School at what time?
4 to 6 p.m.
4 to 6. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Stacy.
Sure thing.
Okay. Well, we will put our heads on this and try to figure out the next steps, but it might be testifying at the budget. That's a good idea, Alan. All right. Is there anything else, a different topic anyone wants to bring up before we recess? Okay. How about a motion to adjourn then?
Move to adjourn.
Second it. Any objections? Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night, Cheryl, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, you're welcome.